Every entrepreneur has a story. Welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, where each episode your host, Brian Carney, will share a drink with a successful business owner and have them discuss their unique journey, gaining insight on what it takes to be an entrepreneur and the different ways to get there. Brian isn't just a beer nerd, he's also the co-founder of River's Edge Advisors, a financial planning firm headquartered in Delaware, specializing in working with business owners. It's time to pour yourself a drink and enjoy a happy half hour with an entrepreneur.
Hey everyone, welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Brian Carney. My guest today is Mitch Russo. Mitch sold his software business and became independently wealthy at the age of 42. Since then, he's worked in several fields and built a business that helps entrepreneurs achieve their version of success. Not only has he written 2 Amazon best-selling books, but he's teamed up and created businesses with Chet, Holmes, Kevin Harrington, and Tony Robbins. Mitch, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. I got a lot of questions, and I'm really excited to learn more about your business. So while we talk, I'm going to be trying a beer called Beer to Drink When It's Cold Outside by Westbrook Brewing Company from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. So it is where I am in December. It's cold. I know you're in the nice tropical warm, but we'll give this a shot and give it a review at the end.
Sounds good.
Okay. So a lot to get to. Your background is pretty expansive. So you have so many different branches to your business. Can you just sort of tell us a little bit about your overall business as it stands today?
Yeah. So this basically started when I sold my software company. So I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I started a software company in my 20s. I grew it throughout my 30s and just as I hit 40, we received an offer to sell the company, and I did, and we sold the company, which again financially was very rewarding.
Sure.
But it's really there that in many ways I would say my career started because the growth that I had in building that software company, the emotional and the mental and lessons and experience and wisdom growth from building that software company enabled me to help others in many ways that I had not even realized at the time.
Yeah.
So from there, that's when I realized, and it wasn't like I came up with the idea. People came over to me and said, "Hey, Mitch, that's pretty cool what you just did.
Sure.
Can you help us do that too?"
That's incredible. So first of all, I'm a little depressed because I just turned 42 a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not yet getting offers to sell my company, but we'll deal with that at another time. So I'm interested in the emotions behind selling a business, because most entrepreneurs don't go into starting a company with the main goal of selling it. So you get an offer and you sell your business. And then I sort of feel like there's this part of an entrepreneur's life where they go, all right, I sold my business. Now what? And 42 is a pretty young age to have that now what experience. So did you find that to be the case for you?
Completely. In fact, I spent years wallowing in now what.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't so clear to me, all of my life, it's funny that you said it the way you did. I actually started a software company for the purpose of creating financial freedom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't have this passion to help lawyers with their billing. For heaven's sakes. I don't even like most lawyers. So,
fair point.
Yeah. So, it's an odd feeling because, I started out with the idea if I could build a company and grow it and then maybe create an asset and sell it, I could have financial freedom. But in the process, everything changed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all of a sudden, I realized that I had a bigger purpose. I realized that it wasn't really about making money. At least I believed, for me anyway,
right,
that was going to happen. That was not, if it doesn't happen this time, it'll happen next time. But I knew that with persistence and with focus, I could build something of value and sell it, or accumulate enough money through activities such as selling or sales or trading or any of these things, and achieve financial independence. But what ended up happening was I started to really enjoy working with others and developing others.
You're right.
So all of a sudden now I went from having 0 employees, it was just me and my partner, And then, 7 years later, I had 100 employees.
Wow.
And all of a sudden now I realized not all of a sudden at 100 employees, but at about 15 employees,
Sure.
I started realizing my shortcomings.
Yep.
I was a terrible manager. I was unable to delegate properly, and didn't understand the true cycle of communication. So I became overbearing and annoying to most people. I'm annoying anyway, but on top of that, just made it
You
even
became
worse.
more annoying. I got it.
More
Yeah.
annoying, right? Right. And so I realized that I actually had to figure out how to educate myself on things like delegation, on management, on structure. And there were no such things at that time called business coaches.
Sure. Yeah.
So
So
I just had to figure it out.
Yeah, that's actually, I find fascinating. And I do feel like one of the things that many entrepreneurs really struggle with is they're really good at, sort of doing their job and doing their work. And then all of a sudden their business starts to grow and now they're wearing a bunch of different hats. I'm also a terrible manager. And I think it's a very difficult thing to do. So how are you able to help your clients really figure out how to work through the difficulty and the strategy behind wearing all these different hats?
Well, it always starts in the same place. All my conversations with new clients start in the same place. And we usually spend about 30 minutes uncovering what they truly want more than anything else. And I have a process which I've developed over several decades that gets me there very quickly. And what ends up happening at that point is I start to realize that, and in some cases, when I begin the process, my new client doesn't even realize what they really want.
Right.
And then by 20, 30, 40 minutes later, not only are they realizing it, I've had several people break down and cry for the first time. They now finally see what their purpose is.
Wow.
Then once we understand that and we align what they have as abilities, skills, talents, and uniqueness to their true purpose, and then we build a business model to support that. Now, some people already have businesses. That's fine.
Right.
We're not going to tell them, nope, got to close that business and start another one. We don't. That's not good advice. If you hear that from your coach, hang up quickly. No, usually what it amounts to is we're going to realign how you interact with that business. For some people, it's better if they back out of the business and exit without exiting, as my friend Jason Duncan says.
Yeah.
And become a silent partner and let people who really love and thrive on helping and managing others do that. And for some, it's, go deeper into the area that really got you into this business. And in one case, I had a founder who was an amazingly brilliant technologist, and he hated being president of the company, but he had to do, and he had no choice. That was, at least he thought he had no choice.
Yeah.
And so by the time we were done together, we had gotten him to a point where he was really enjoying life again and really enjoying his business, and his business was finally growing again for the first time.
Wow. I find this fascinating because, we alluded to it a little bit earlier, but a lot of times these entrepreneurs and these business owners, it ends up not really being about the money anymore. A lot of the times they have really high incomes and they're doing things that they want, but they're still miserable because they feel a little bit trapped by their business. I feel like, when you're able to take a client and walk them through that breakthrough to have them enjoy their job, that has to be extremely rewarding for you.
It is. It's one of my favorite things to do. So the thing that I love doing, that's the first, highest, most fun thing I do, but it only takes a short period of time. The second part of that is building the business model. That's where I pull all of my life experience and creativity in and create that model that I believe, and I think at the time my client certainly believes, that they now can expand rapidly from where they were because they see things differently now and have aligned more closely with their true passion.
Yeah. So when you say, you help them build a model, is that sort of like helping them install efficient processes that now align with where they're trying to go with their new sort of found knowledge? Is that what you mean?
That's certainly part of it. Part of
Yeah.
it is understanding who their true clients are, customers are, what their real market is,
Mm-hmm.
and how to approach that market in unique ways. A lot of people are stuck. I mean, I remember this happened many times. I take on a client, the guy's like has a $50 million business. He's doing really well. He said to me in the first meeting, in the first 5 minutes of our meeting, he goes, yeah, so-and-so recommended I speak to you, but I got to tell you, I don't think I'm going to need you or even want to hire you because you're not going to be able to teach me anything about my business because I've been immersed in it for 35 years.
Yeah.
And I said, sure, fair enough. I get it. I said, and I'll tell you what, let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. And maybe I'll be wrong. And this might be the first time ever, but almost every time, in fact, every time I show any client pathways they never saw before, marketing opportunities, sales channels they never saw before, expansion capability, multiple revenue stream possibilities they just never saw before.
Right. So
And
it's
then
all about sort of changing that frame of view or that point of view.
here's the biggest block to success. Success. Once you're successful at something, you no longer are not, I shouldn't say it blanketly this way, but many people are no longer open to being more successful in a different way.
Interesting. That does make sense.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting next to this man. He sold his company for $250 million. And we're in an angel investment meeting.
Mm-hmm.
He's a few years older than me. I was just out of time slips, and I'm sitting there listening to these brilliant young kids. Basically they're 26 years old and they have this brilliant idea. They're founding this new thing. And the guy sitting next to me, presentation after presentation, he and I are chit-chatting back and forth. And his comment is, that's stupid. That'll never work. Oh, that's dumb. And I'm thinking to myself, of course it is to him, because he just made $250 million on setting up some obscure link between databases or some crap like that.
Right.
And I mean, that's in his mind that, well, listen, if you want to be rich, just set up an obscure link between databases. What's the problem? Don't you get that?
Yeah.
So the biggest barrier to success is your past success.
That actually is, that's come up a couple of times on the podcast, but in a much different way. I do feel like there's a certain point where you get successful and you go, okay, well, I'm successful compared to other people, and you get into sort of that comparison game. I'm not as successful as this person, but I'm more successful than these people, and you do get sort of complacent at some point. It is a huge thing to be able to recognize that and be willing to sort of venture down that dangerous road and sort of really expand on that.
So true. And the biggest problem, you brought it up or you alluded to it, is that, it's sort of like when you came on the show today, you said, I'm going to be, how old are you now?
42. I turned 42.
I'm going to be 42 and I'm not independently wealthy. And right then and there, I realized that you're not alone. A lot of people would say that, but you don't know what's going on in my mind.
Sure.
I'll give you an example. When I sold Time Slips Corporation, I just got my first multi-million-dollar check from the buyout, and I'm at a party with a bunch of other people. I was invited by the CEO of the company that bought us. And in this party, I'm just wandering around holding my beer and chatting with folks. And one guy is saying, I just can't decide whether it's going to be the G4 or the G5. The G5 has more seats, has a little bit more fuel capacity. And he goes, yeah, because, it's so hard getting to Aspen from Dallas. I got to have my own jet. I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm a loser.
You're right.
Such a loser. I don't even have a G2. I don't even have a negative G. I don't even have an O. Forget about, it's like, it's basically, once you start comparing yourself to others, it's a losing game.
So
Instead,
true.
my answer is, where were you last year at this time, Brian? Where were, whoever you're talking to, where were you last year?
Yep.
If you're listening to us speak right now, are you in a better place now than you were last year? That's the only comparison that counts.
It's a great point. You're in a game against yourself, not against anyone else. And
Exactly.
but you see it, I'm sure, all the time with your clients, that ego can really derail people.
I know. And I had a guy, and this not a woman, a man. I had a guy who said, yeah, I'm not Jeff Bezos. And I said, yeah, except there's only one person who is. So
Right.
Why would you compare yourself? Yeah, I know. But I mean, we started out in the same place. In fact, we went to the same school a couple of years apart. And I had to like immediately stop and say, look, this isn't going to work.
Right. Yeah.
Because all it's going to do is make you feel bad no matter what you do.
Yep.
How about we reset this now before we even begin working together?
Yep.
And in fact, that's part of what my proprietary tool set's about.
Yeah.
When I built this new platform for coaches called Clientfolio, one of the most important things that we do as a coach is we help people grow in different areas of their life. And the only way to know that they're growing is to keep track of their growth.
It's true.
Well, so there is no coaching platform that I've discovered that does that, at least the way I needed to do it. So I built my own, because we build literally in our coaching platform, we show graphs to our clients every week of their progress through this process of growing a company. So, I mean,
so you built, obviously background in software helps, but so now for Clientfolio, if I'm a coach, I buy your system, and I'm actually able to use your system to help me do a better job of coaching my clients. Is that sort of how it works?
That's sort of how it works. And when you say buy, you subscribe.
Gotcha.
And coaching software can be very expensive. When I started looking at different products, I was okay. I do have an active practice. I was okay with spending $200-$300 a month for software. I mean, look, Infusionsoft and even ClickFunnels at the, with their full model cost about that. But I didn't feel like it was fair to charge that much, particularly to beginning coaches. Mm-hmm. So I decided that I was going to put a cap on what I charge for Clientfolio. And it's only right now, it's only $19.97 a month.
Oh, wow.
And the reason I did that is because I want to grow with my clients. Yeah. So as they get better, as they accelerate their processes, as they use my tool set to make more money and to help their own clients accelerate more rapidly, then they will add more coaches. And when they add a coach, they pay another $19.97 a month.
Yep. That's great. I'm interested in how your books fit into all of this. I definitely want to talk. So let's talk about your first book. So in 2015, you're running a $25 million business out of a spare bedroom in your house. Is that right?
Well, let me correct the year. It's actually, it was 2009 through 2012.
Okay.
And when Chet passed away, I exited the organization. So I started 2013 with no list, no customers, no concept of who I was going to be again. I had to reinvent myself all over again.
Wow.
And, what am I supposed to do here? Am I going to get a job? I mean, look, I have money. I could hang out.
Right.
But I realized long ago that, once you achieve the goal of financial freedom, that's no longer exciting.
Sure.
I mean, sure, you can make more money, but I mean, ultimately it's just not that exciting anymore.
Yep.
So I needed a different way. And it took me some time to figure it out. So the first thing I did is I called friends. I called people in my world that I knew and said, hey, what do you think I should do? So you know who Jay Abraham is?
I do not.
So Jay Abraham is a business consultant, the master business consultant, several levels above me by maybe decades or eons above me in his abilities. But I called him up and I said, Jay, what do I do? And he said, Mitch, I don't know what you should do. I don't know anybody who needs what you do, but I do know that you cannot die on this planet without sharing your knowledge. The world needs what you know.
Yeah.
I said, well, okay, well, that's pretty cool, I guess. What does that mean?
What do I do with that? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, is that like, do I hold a party? I mean, what do I do? And he said, I don't know. But you just have to share it somehow. I said, okay. So I started making notes and I started writing and I started compiling some of the processes that I had figured out going from 3 million to 30 million with Tony and Chet.
Yeah.
And that became the book called The Invisible Organization.
It's great. So talk a little bit about that book and being able to have a business that operates virtually 2.5 years ago kind of seemed like, maybe that'll work, maybe it won't. And now post-pandemic, well, I guess we're still technically in the pandemic, but now everyone was sort of forced for at least a year plus to operate virtually. It seems like you were ahead of your time.
Yeah, I was, but don't forget what evolved between the time that book was published and today, or even 2 years ago, are the tools.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what I had to cobble together to build and run business breakthroughs, those tools now exist and didn't before. So,
right.
I mean, that's part of it. The other thing is that it became much more common for people to be working from home.
Yes.
You know, I tell the story in the book about calling for a reservation at a major airline. And I'm talking to this very nice young woman who's helping me get my flight set up. And I say to her casually, so how do you like working from home? And she says, what? I said, well, you work from home, don't you? She goes, well, actually, yeah, I do. I said, well, in fact, all of you guys do. She goes, well, yeah, we do. Yeah. So, I mean, airlines got this idea a while ago. Instead of having a big building with a big parking lot and a big insurance policy on a big piece of real estate with thousands of kilowatts running it every day.
Sure.
Why don't we just send people home with a modem and or in this case, a VPN and a laptop computer and a headset, and they could do their job from their kitchen and they'd be happy and we'd be happy.
Yep.
Well, all I did was take that and take it to the next level. So the book is about three things. It's about the mindset of the CEO that it takes to run a virtual corporation. Mm-hmm. It's about the power you have once virtual that you didn't have before. The power in marketing, the power in selling, the power in creating.
Yeah.
And the third part, which is now the obsolete part, is the technology required to do it.
Yeah. You're right. That is the obsolete part. Now, I'd be interested in your opinion on in our business. We had an incredible culture heading into the pandemic, and I do think the work from home environment sort of killed our culture. What advice would you have given to us to say, hey, this is what you need to do to preserve that culture?
Okay, so this is a great question, and it's super important. And here's the simplest answer I can give you. If you're the CEO
mm-hmm.
and you send your entire team home because of a pandemic, then it's now your responsibility to over communicate.
Mm.
So the reason that culture wanes in remote work is because the bonds become broken.
Yes.
And you must set up chat rooms for your people, for your teams. You must communicate on a daily basis with a short video, at least. You must hold group calls with the teams as the leader, excuse me, and you must share your optimism at all times. And your culture will thrive and I'm giving you the simplistic 30-second answer. But the whole idea here, it really comes down to the way, look, we communicate with body language, we communicate with physical presence,
mm-hmm.
we communicate with the way we dress and the way we care for ourselves. When we show up at a company, and I mean, I had an employee who wore the same clothes every single day. I mean, it wasn't like they were dirty. He had 5 sets of the same clothes. He wore the same thing every day.
Steve Jobs.
Well, like Steve, right? And that became part of his personality, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's gone now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had another person who used to sing and play their guitar in the break room. Well, that's gone too.
Yeah.
We had a CEO when I worked for a company out of Dallas. We had a CEO who basically had virtually no communication, even when it wasn't virtual.
Yep.
And now, of course, they go virtual and they're starting to fall apart. Well, this is
Yeah.
back a couple of years. And the reason is because we've chopped all of those different communication channels, some of them very subtle,
Right.
down to almost only one.
Yep. It is interesting that, an organization can be held together, their culture can be held together by nothing other than physical presence. And when you take that away and you have to figure out a different way to do it, bad things can happen if you're not prepared for it.
Right. Well, in a very famous book that talked about how successful managers manage their company, they had a term called MBWA, and that stands for management by walking around. And I learned that from Tom Peters, who spoke from stage many years ago. He wrote the book In Search for Excellence. And so when I learned that, I would get up out of my chair 3 times a day.
Yep.
And I had about a 40,000 square foot facility that I was running, and I would walk around 3 times a day, walk around.
Yeah.
And I'd make fun of the guy who had a foot pedal under his table that he would flip when I walked by, because he was playing a video game before I showed up. And
Right.
now it looked like a spreadsheet on the screen. And I caught him 100 times. I just made a joke of it. But he did his job, so I didn't mind. And
Right.
But the whole point is that I got to know people by walking around.
Yes.
I got to find out who they were. I let them see more of what I was about.
Yep.
And I believe that because I did that, when I sold the company, it was a surprise to many people in the organization,
Mm-hmm.
but most of them, not all, but most of them were happy for me.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's a good culture, where they're happy for you. So You take the first book. How does the second book come about, Power Tribes?
Well, once I built time slips, and after I did that and I was done with that, I did all this other stuff. And it wasn't until after I left Business Breakthroughs that someone came to me and said, "Hey, I read that blog post you wrote about certification. Do you think you could do that for us?" And I said, "Oh, sure. Yeah, I could absolutely do that." And so I started working with this guy, and turns out that it came back to me so instantly. And on top of that, in helping him, I had developed several core processes for helping others as well. And within 10 weeks, working together, he had created a 6-figure payday out of zero, out of nothing.
Wow.
And he was so excited about it. And I showed him how we could do that every quarter, and then even more. And then, of course, other people said, "Well, I saw what you just did for Josh. Can you do that for us too?" And on and on and on, until finally I said, I should probably write a book about this.
Right.
And my first fear was, oh my God, this is like my sort of secret sauce. If I write this book,
Yes.
and give all this secret sauce away,
I'm not valuable anymore.
I'm not valuable anymore. Right.
Yeah.
But that was an impulse thought. I had already known the answer to that. The answer is that information alone is valuable, but it's not as valuable as implementation.
Mm.
And information without implementation equals zero.
Yes.
That's the equation. So most people will not, and in some cases cannot, implement just from reading a book. And that, to me, has turned my book Power Tribes into one of the greatest selling tools I ever created.
So when you say certification, explain a little bit about what you mean about that, how that can sort of launch a business.
Well, what my brand of certification is called Building a Power Tribe.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So when you hear some coach, like a famous coach like John Maxwell,
Mm-hmm.
talk about his coaching division and how he has, 500, I don't know how many he has, certified coaches. What someone like John Maxwell has done is he created a test, and he sold that test, and that person passed the test, and they then got the title of certified coach, and they got a very, very beautiful certificate that they could hang right here behind them as they speak on the phone.
Yep.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they get a Facebook group to say hi to each other.
Yeah.
To me, that's not a business model.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it's not a business model is because the person is a coach because they love coaching.
Right.
They probably don't love marketing and sales, and they probably don't like building funnels or systems. They probably don't want to build new stuff that they don't think they need. That's a different business.
Yeah.
And that's not why they're there. So if you go back and you ask those certified coaches, how much money has that certification made for them? Only a few will tell you it's made them money. So that is not what I do. I want to be clear.
Yes.
First of all, that's not a recurring revenue model. The only thing I work on with my clients is recurring revenue.
Great point. Yep.
So now when I build a power tribe, we start out by saying, well, look, every year your clients are going to have to recertify. Okay, great. Well, now how much do we charge for certification? Well, what we then do is I use a system of tools that I've developed to pretty much figure out to the dollar what the right amount would be to charge. And usually, depending on the process, it's between $5,000 and $28,000 a year.
Mm.
Because again, what we're looking for is that if someone purchases a certification system, they must generate between 3 and 10x ROI, or they won't do it again next year.
That makes sense.
And if they won't do it again next year, then we failed.
It's then that becomes a transaction one-time business, which is not good.
Right.
Yeah.
But then we go further than that.
Uh-huh.
We said, well, what else can we set up as a separate recurring revenue system?
Mm-hmm.
So now what we then do is we put marketing tools in place, and we make sure that every year when they say, yes, I want to recertify, they got that 10x on certification because of the vast system of tools that my clients provide to their certified partners that make them money in advance. So I'll give you an example. Whenever I work with somebody, I say, look, you just can't sell them a test like so many other people do. We need lead flow.
Yeah.
So that means you need a CRM system dedicated just to your certified consultants or your certified coaches. And we need to feed that lead flow actively every week, every month with fresh leads.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to do that? And usually the response is, well, heck, Mitch, I don't even have enough leads for my own business. How can I do that? And I said, well, look, let's take a look at the picture here. We're charging $20,000 for certification. Our first class will probably be no less than 10 people, likely 20.
Yeah.
So we just generated $200,000, $400,000 here. Do you think we could peel off 15% of that and break that up and spend it on our own certified consultants for lead gen? Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's do that.
Yeah.
So the other thing that ends up happening is that when a company has a new certification program, I also ask another very simple question. I said, okay, how many customers do you have? Okay. And they'll tell me a number. And I said, well, okay. Let's say they told me 1,000 customers, 1,000 clients. I said, well, I'm going to make a guess here. I'm going to guess that you actually in your database have between 15 and 25,000 leads that never converted.
Yep.
They say, yeah, you're right. I said, well, how about if we take those leads and we use them to basically jumpstart our certification system, and we turn those leads into leads for our certified coaches to go off and come back to those same clients who didn't buy before and say, yeah, sure, we're here to sell you the same thing again, but now you're going to get us instead. So instead of just buying the product, you're now going to get a coach.
Right.
Okay. And that usually ends up converting 5 to 10% of those leads right away.
That's great.
So now the company is making more money from selling their products. The certified coaches are now making money by helping people and selling their coaching services through the company. And on top of that, we now have much more money to spend for marketing. And that's how we jumpstart a typical program.
Well, that's a legitimate process that I'm sure not many coaches actually have in place to be able to lean on.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And that's why I said before, most coaches are good at coaching, but they're probably not good at selling. And that's kind of really where we shine when we build programs that are designed to help create marketplaces for our certified coaches.
Yeah. That's incredible. So another area that you do, which I'm fascinated by, is you help people with radio ads. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, given the state of radio, how's that arm of your business, and how's that done over the past few years, and how do you do it?
Well, let me give you some background there. When we were building Business Breakthroughs International, Chet trained me on how to buy media and how to basically utilize radio. And we were at that time spending, I think it was maybe $15,000 a month on radio. And so after, he wouldn't turn that over to me for months until he was certain that I was fully trained on how to do that.
Yeah.
And then what I started to do once I took it over is I started to optimize that. And then, I would get comments from Tony and Chet where they would say things to me like, Mitch, radio got to pay for itself. And I would argue, I said, well, you got to understand that we're only, when we run a radio ad, we're only selling something for $200 or less. It's the follow-on business that really pays for it. And they said, well, your goal should be to make radio self-liquidating in the first sale. And I said, I could do that.
Okay.
And I decided at that point that I was going to drill down and figure out what it takes to make radio more productive and basically self-liquidating, in some cases profitable, even on an entry-level product.
Wow.
So we were at a point where we were getting over 6,000 phone calls a month coming into our call center. And we had a closing rate of 10%.
Good Lord.
And that was a lot of people who weren't even qualified. If we took out the non-qualified people, we were closing at a 19% rate on qualified callers.
Incredible. Generated from a radio ad call-in.
You got it.
Those numbers are insane.
One call closed, 14-minute script, signed. And now we bring them into a webinar. We teach them something amazing. We take them through one of our processes. And in the webinar, we upsell them a $4,000 product. And now that webinar generates between $30,000 and $40,000 every time we run it. We're running 300 of them a month.
Holy crap. That's a good math problem there.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Well, let me back up a little bit. Tell me a little bit of how do you even get involved with Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes? Like, how does that even come about?
Well, when I was building Timeslips Corporation, I had this pesky sales guy who wouldn't leave me alone, who was constantly trying to sell me his ads. That was Chet Holmes. So Chet was working for a California lawyer at the time. And, if you've ever read his book, The Ultimate Sales Machine, which I highly recommend, it's an amazing book. He talks about this thing that he coined. It's called the Dream 100. And the Dream 100 is your 100 top prospects that if you could close even 20 of them, it would change your life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was one of his Dream 100. I was in that list.
That's cool.
And he worked really hard to try and close me. I was really hard to close.
Yeah.
But in the process, we became really good friends. And he did close me. And I, in fact, ended up becoming very loyal subscriber or advertiser in that publication because it made us so much money.
Yeah.
And that's how years later, after I sold the company and then hired Chet to help me run the sales team at Sage. And then later, Chet called and asked for some help building his sales force. I got involved. Next thing I know, I'm running his company. And now he's telling me about an upcoming call or meeting with Tony Robbins.
Wow.
And I said, great. Let me know how that goes. So he has that meeting with Tony Robbins. And next thing I know, he says, well, Tony wants you in the business. So the three of us started Business Breakthroughs International.
Incredible.
So, yeah. And so the three of us were equity partners in this new joint venture. And we took it from a base of basically zero to nearly 30 million in revenue by the time I left. And by the time that Chet had passed, and It was time for me to go.
Holy crap. That's amazing. I have one of my favorite quotes is a Tony Robbins quote. And I actually have it sitting on my shelf over there. And I sort of pound my hand on the table at my office with this. And it's complexity is the enemy of execution. And I feel like we live in a world now where simplicity is a lost art form.
Yep.
How are you able to sort of dig into your clients and really sort of hammer that home for them?
Well, I like 80-20 a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a different way of saying what you just said.
Yeah.
I would say that perfection is the price of bankruptcy.
Oh.
And so basically, if you want to be perfect, then you keep on trying to be perfect, and you'll be trying to be perfect until you go bankrupt, unfortunately.
Love that.
But so for me, in my 80-20 world, I want to get 80% of the benefits for 20% of the work, or sell 80% of my products to the highest paid products to the 20% of my customers.
Yeah.
And if I stay focused on that, everything makes more sense.
Yep. That's a great view. That's a real math problem, that 80-20. I've sat down and done that before, and that math is shockingly accurate at how that ends up shaking out.
Absolutely. And it's called the Pareto principle, by the way.
Yeah.
And that simple idea, basically, there you go.
You have the book right here.
Richard Koch, right. But now, so again, I mean, by understanding 80-20, then you also understand that 80-20 is fractal.
Yeah.
And what I mean by fractal, because if you read Richard Koch's book, it means that there's also 80-20 of the 80-20.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's 80-20 of the 80-20 of the 80-20.
Yep.
So that's why when you walk into a Starbucks, because they do understand this, you will see in most cases, a $2,500 espresso machine in the store. Why? Because 20% of any group will spend more than you're charging. And then 20% of the 20% will spend even more. And so as you take this down 2 or 3 levels, you realize someone come in for a cup of coffee, you might look over at a $2,500 machine and go, that's cool, I'll take that.
Yeah. Right.
It's the same in every business.
Yep. So I wanted to ask one final question since we're running out of time here. Your career has been everywhere. How many jobs in total have you had in your lifetime? Or how many different careers, I guess?
Well, if you count being the lead guitar player of the rock band called Absolutely Free.
Yeah.
Then that number would go to probably, I'm going to say 8.
Wow. That's great. What, and one follow-up question. Why did you name your rock band Absolutely Free?
Well, that's an excellent question. I was a very big fan of Frank Zappa.
Okay.
And I used to travel by subway to New York City to try and catch a glimpse of him outside the Cafe Wha in Greenwich Village where he played.
Cool.
And his very first album that I think he ever released was called Absolutely Free.
Oh, wow.
So when it came time for me to form my own band, I said, you know what, let's call it, in honor of Frank, Absolutely Free.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. My father-in-law always had a joke that he wanted to name his band Free Beer. So when they put it on the marquee, it would say free beer tonight, and everyone would come in and see him. So anyway, Mitch, this was great. I really enjoyed talking to you. It was, your background is phenomenal. And I think there's so many good nuggets in this. So I really appreciate your time. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about Mitch, go to his website at mitchrusso360.com, and you can buy his book, Power Tribes and the Invisible Organization, anywhere books are sold. If you'd like to connect with me on the Untapped app where I rate all these beers, my username is brcarney7. To learn more about how my firm helps business owners with their financial planning, visit riversedgeadvisors.com. And to hear past episodes of the podcast, go to happy-half-hour.com. All right. One final piece of business, beer to drink when it's cold outside, Westbrook Brewing. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. I definitely would drink it again. Very good beer, especially again, like I said, it's getting cold up here. So Mitch, thanks again so much. I really appreciate it. And make sure you go to check Mitch out everywhere I mentioned. Mitch, cheers to you.
Thank you, Brian. I'm a Sam Adams guy. Just want to let you know.
Oh, so we can, side note, Dogfish Head here in Delaware was recently purchased by Sam Adams. So, that's a power couple if there ever was one in the beer industry.
I agree. That's good to hear.
All right. Thanks, Mitch. Take care and cheers.
Thank you for listening to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, sponsored by River's Edge Advisors. For more information on how River's Edge Advisors can help you, visit their website at riversedgeadvisors.com. If you'd like to connect with Brian Carney for business advice or just to share a beer, follow him on Instagram at riversedgeadvisors_LLC.